stacked it right behind the infantry, and on a certain day, a lot of tank destroyers, tanks, big guns started moving up, and at 11 o'clock at night they started firing on this mountainside, and we took 2 high explosive shells to 1 white phosphorus. The white phosphorus would burn them out if it hit them, and the high explosives would blow them. So we fired on that for quite a while. Next morning they sent the infantry up and couldn't take it because they had dug deep holes in the rocks, and they had their guns embedded in rock and the like. So that's the reason they went to the Anzio beachhead and was going to go to Rome from there. And they finally, before we went up there to Anzio, they took, I think I forget how many bombers, a whole swarm of them went over and bombed Cassino and blowed that monastery all to pieces because they figured that's where the Germans had a hideout there. But we went on to Anzio, and the Germans could hit any place in it with their artillery because it wasn't a very big beachhead. But the guys that dig holes in the ground about so deep, and anything they could find to put across it, and then put about a foot of dirt on top of that, and they lived in the ground. And it was sometimes damp and not so good, but they finally, on I think it was June the 4th, we started out and broke out of the Anzio beachhead, and we went into Rome. That was an open city, and it hadn't been bombed or anything. We stayed all night in a big park and took off the next morning, and the battle went on north. Lots of fighting going, lots of mountains. I know at one place we took ammunition up. Most of our driving was at night so the Germans wouldn't shoot at us or bomb us. And we'd come to a place that it was kind of a higher elevation, and that afternoon it come up with snow, and it snowed real hard, and them poor little old Arab kids running around there naked, shivering and they was having fun too, but they said that it hadn't snowed there for 20-some years. But we were heading back home when it was dark, and I was driving this whole half track, and one of my helpers was sitting on the gas tank right behind me, and we was going down the road real slow, and he said, "Sarge, you going straight ahead?" And I said, "Well, I guess so." He said, "Well, stop and let me off." And on up ahead there, about 100 feet, it was the road made a sharp turnaround, and over on the other side there was a cliff about 100 feet high, and he had good night vision. I didn't really like him, but he had good night vision, and we got along fine. But when they got up to the Po River, the engineers had built a bridge across, and we went on from there. And from there on, the Germans were getting short of gasoline and stuff, and they weren't as strong as they used to be, but they still had some pretty good skirmishes. But we finally had them wore down to where they finally surrendered, and we were in town called Vercelli when the war was over, and we stayed one night there and then took off east toward Torino, and there was a big lake there that we camped there for a couple of months before we started home, and things were pretty nice around there then, and a lot of our officers and other men got to go home, and that's where I was made acting first sergeant. And anyway, it was a nice place to rest, and they finally started us on our old railroad home down toward Pisa, and I told the rest of it, I guess, but it was a long, tiresome thing. 3 years and 2 months, and we had more combat time on the line and fired more ammunition than any other of the outfits in the 1st Armored Division. We fired 380,000 rounds, 105, and had 550 days of actual combat time on the line. And that seemed like we were fighting all the time. Yeah. So that's about the size of my story.
Did have let's take a look here. Okay. Wanted to ask a couple of questions, just kind of into getting involved into the military. You said you enlisted, or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then and you're from Little York?
No, I was living down around Berwick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time I was drafted, we was only supposed to be in the Army a year, you know, and but I was in Fort Bragg on December the 7th when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
And all the furloughs and everything was stopped, and I didn't see home I missed 4 Christmases in a row, so I was glad to get home.
Do you have any other family members that were in the military, or?
Yeah. I had a brother, Charles. He had it worse than I did, I think. He was in the combat engineers. They put bridges across rivers. They laid minefields. They made roads through minefields, and a lot of combat stuff too. Okay. Yeah. And then my other brother worked over at the Highway Ordnance Plant. So